This is the Buell M2 Cyclone. And in case you're wondering, it's not just any bike. It's a naked roadster that once unleashed up to 93 brake horsepower at peak performance. But right now, well, let's just say it's on its last breath and the chances of it running again are pretty slim. But what you're about to watch is a thrilling man versus battle, where the guys at Dr. Motorcycle take on this rusted relic with the aim of restoring it back to its former glory. Will they succeed? Rare iconic finds certainly don't get better than this, but restoration challenges don't get much tougher either. With over 66,000 miles on the odometer, this bike's history is a mystery. Looking at it now though, it's painfully obvious. This bike is a shadow of its former self. Rust scars the frame, edges are corroded, and parts are missing entirely. To put it mildly, it's a nightmare for any restorer. Yes, the Dr. Motorcycle crew decided to take the plunge. They knew the odds weren't in their favour, yet they're setting out on this impossible journey, all in the hope of reviving a legend. But the big question here is, will it run? Well, that's something we have to wait to find out at the end of the video. Right off the bat, the restorer showed that he meant business. He dismantled some casing components to aid access. Then he unleashed a cleaning solution, letting it seep into every corner, followed by some careful brushing and a thorough rinse. Watching this, I couldn't quite figure out what he was up to, but it soon became clear. This was a prelude to full disassembly. He was getting the bike ready for the real work ahead. He started with the carburetor, then moved on to the battery, and finally, the turbocharger. The turbo itself was a marvel to look at, but before I could fully appreciate its design, he was already on it, almost like a surgeon prepping for a high-stakes procedure. Piece by piece, he took apart the turbo, replaced the damaged parts, and reassembled it with the precision of someone who's done this 100 times. Next, he tackled the carburetor, spark plug, and exhaust. Expectedly, he found some worn screws and rusted components that required sanding, welding, and general repairs. Without missing a beat, he set to work, sanding, welding, and adjusting each component with an intense focus. But then, just as everything seemed on track, he hit a wall. Some parts were too far gone, beyond salvaging. Usually, in situations like this, where a component is damaged beyond repair, the most likely solution is to buy replacements from the spare parts market. It's a quick fix, and it saves a lot of time. But in this case, the restorer decided to do something different. Instead of buying spare parts, he opted to construct them in-house. Initially, I was skeptical about it because, as much as I don't doubt his skill, I know how difficult it is to create stuff from scratch, especially if that wasn't part of the plan from the onset. But he pulled it off, fabricating each piece with meticulous care. A few minor tweaks later, and everything was perfect. With that problem solved, he moved over to the engine. Needless to say, this is one of the most important aspects of the restoration, and the restorer treated it as such. First, he drilled a hole into the top engine casing. And then he soaked that same casing in a cleaning solution. Of course, he did the usuals, like brushing, sanding, and painting. This painstaking process took a while, which perhaps explains why most part of it happened off camera. But really, I couldn't complain because the outcome was remarkable. Absolutely mind-blowing if you ask me. From there, he proceeded to repair the engine. Again, this entire process happened off camera, but given how the casing turned out, I was very optimistic about the engine. But ultimately, there was no way for me to tell whether or not the engine runs, at least until it is tested later on in this video. Moving on, the restorer reinstalled the casing and a few essential accessories. Then, out came the 3D printer. Yes, you heard me right. This craftsman was legit printing custom components. I have seen quite a few restoration videos in my lifetime, but I have never seen a restorer whipping up parts on the spot with a 3D printer. It was so cool to watch. But guess what? The installation of those components made for a better watch, especially when the air-to-fuel meter came on. Next, he brought out the seat, which was clearly due for an upgrade. But trust me, nothing will prepare you for the amazing transformational work the restorer is about to do on it. After carefully yanking off the leather covering, he used a disc grinder to smoothen the edges and body of the foam. But I guess that wasn't enough because as soon as he dropped the grinder, he grabbed a scraper and peeled off some chunks from the foam. Talk about the pursuit of perfection. Once the restorer was satisfied, he cut out a new leather and glued it around the foam. But to further ensure that the leather sits firm on the foam, he drilled a few screws into it. Then, he chopped off the excess leather and displayed the seat. You cannot imagine how excited I was to see the seat in this state. I mean, you could argue it's one of the less stressful things the restorer had to do. Anyway, once that was sorted, he moved over to the tank. Or giving it some hard scrubbing, sanding, and a well-deserved cold bath. This, of course, revamped the look of the tank. More importantly, it allowed the restorer to assess the state of the faded paint, and as you can clearly see, it's pretty bad. Then I remembered how horrible it looked at the beginning of this project, and then it just dawned on me the amazing work that this pro restorer from Dr. Motorcycle had done so far. But my respect for his craftsmanship grew even stronger after I spent a few minutes researching the background of the Buell M2 Cyclone. I suddenly realized how significant this restoration would be if it was completed. The company, Buell, was founded by ex-Harley-Davidson engineer Eric Buell in 1983. That same year, Eric rolled out the RW 750, which competed in the AMA Formula One Motorcycle Road Racing Championship. But when the series was cancelled, Eric pivoted, channeling his racing expertise into high-performance street machines. Then came 1993. Against his lawyer's advice, Eric sold 49% of Buell to Harley-Davidson for $500,000. It was a bold move, but it paid off. This partnership sparked a whole new chapter for Buell, bringing us the legendary M2 Cyclone, a powerhouse naked roadster produced from 1997 to 2002. over 9,000 units left the factory, but I reckon only a few of them are still running today. So, if somehow the restorer is able to revive this one, he will not only have met his restoration goal, but he will also have succeeded in preserving the heritage of the bike. So he performed another rigorous round of scrubbing before spraying it again. This time, the result was a lot better, but the tank wasn't ready just yet. It still had to go through a painting phase. That took a few minutes and ultimately restored the beauty of the tank. But again, there were still a few things to be done, like the cover and the emblem by the side. Once those were sorted, it was time to assemble everything together. Sadly, the entire reassembly process happened off camera, leaving us on the edge, wondering how all the intricate pieces fit back together. The suspense was almost unbearable. I kept asking myself, will this really look like the classic machine I'm hoping for? Then, the moment of truth eventually arrived, and all I could say was, wow. Seeing it on screen, I could hardly believe it was the same bike. I had high hopes, sure, but the elegance of the finished product was breathtaking. Just when I thought the excitement had peaked, he fired up the engine. That powerful roar sent shivers down my spine. And when he finally took it for a test ride, I found myself grinning like a kid with a brand new toy. Of course, all credit goes to the skill and dedication of Buell Motorcycles team. They've truly worked magic on this project, and I cannot thank them enough. So, over to you now. Tell me, what part of the restoration did you enjoy the most? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to explore more amazing restorations on our channel.